iPhone then does an HTTP, well, it ups that interface, and it's on a completely separate AT&T network. It's on a different IP range, and your iPhone actually talks to a Lucent Alcatel visual voicemail switch. Does some crypto stuff, some authentication things, and it downloads your visual voicemail. So at any time, you could have up to 3 different networks bridged on your iPhone when you're receiving visual voicemail. And if you're curious, if you were to intentionally put something on that APN and try to route across it, you can't really go far. I'm just saying. You know, it's what we do, right? PDP IP2, I'm not really sure. I've never seen it up. I don't know what that does. PDP IP3, the third internal interface, that's used with tethering. So anytime that you tether your iPhone, even though you're not supposed to, that is what you would use. It runs a little DHCP server to give your Mac or your PC or whatever an IP address. So for the purposes of this talk, we're going to focus on PDP IP0. And you can see that AT&T has assigned that interface the IP of 1069.62.220. That is the NATed IP that you would live on when you're behind AT&T's cellular IP, 3G, Edge, whatever network. So a little note here, in July 2007, the iPhone dev community figured out that the root password on everybody's iPhone is Alpine. And we all got a big kick out of it, and you're like, oh, stupid users, they should change all their passwords, blah, blah, blah. And so I started looking around to see, well, exactly how is this manifested in the real world? How many people are exploiting this, or how many people really know what to do when everybody has the same password? And the only thing that I could really find was some mailing list chatter. There was a school admin who was saying that kids on the dorm networks, they were rooting people's iPhones over the wireless network, which is a kind of a contained issue, right? It isn't some widespread problem. Well, so big deal. You're at a hacker convention with your stupid default root password, and people root your iPhone, and it affects just people at the convention. Well, what I found in about May timeframe of last year is that AT&T did not filter IP to IP traffic on their network, behind their NATed network. So when you're on AT&T's network and you think, well, I just have my little phone, whether it's the cheapy little free phone with your little WAP browser, or if it's your BlackBerry, or if it's your laptop Connect card, or any of these 3G services, your Kindle, whatever you have, you think, well, it's just me connected to the internet. What I found was it's actually a lot like this. I found multiple /16, multiple Class B networks that I could see from my iPhone or from my wireless card inside of their NATed network. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So your smartphone, your laptop, your BlackBerry, your Windows smartphone, PDA, whatever, has been on one giant flat network with everybody else. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I saw out there. So you can kind of just see everybody. If you use some SNMP tools, you can see a lot more, but not anymore because I fixed everything. So I started looking around, and I conducted 52 scans. And I should say 52 scans using Nmap that actually saved the data for, so I could process it later on, looking for 4 known ports. The reason why I was looking for 4 known ports is because has anybody ever done port scanning over a cellular network? Probably maybe fooled around a little bit. It's not exactly like plugging into a Gigi T5 and just letting it rip, right? It's a little higher latency. Average, you're looking at 200 to 300 milliseconds pinging times, so it's fairly slow. So in order to quickly identify devices that I could see, I was only looking for 4 known ports. I would also conduct port scans of entire Class Bs and /24s, and what I would do is basically fire up Nmap, put my phone on my nightstand, go to bed, and see what I got the next morning because it would take that long. And sometimes it wouldn't finish, so I had incomplete data. But I had 52 total complete scans. Now, one thing to note about port scanning from your iPhone. I could have, I guess, popped my SIM card out, put it in my old Air card, slapped it in my laptop, and just done it that way. Your iPhone gets very, very, very hot when it's slinging out that many packets. Now, that isn't my iPhone, but it's an awesome conference slide, right? I fire up a Nmap, lay it on my nightstand. My wife would pick up my phone. She's like, why is your phone so hot? I'm like, it's busy. When the cellular network's going and the CPU's going, it's not exactly the use case that Jobs and the gang probably thought of when they threw it out there. But I kind of thought that there was something cool about doing all these scans from my iPhone. So what did I find? I technically found 10,589 some odd IP addresses up, so something that responded to the initial ping sweep. If any of you have ever done really large scans, Class Bs or anything bigger, you know that you kind of got to do an initial ping sweep. Well, that's what I did. So about 10,000 devices responded in some way, and of those devices, I found that 83 were running SSH. 24 were running port 80, and again, this is all on AT&T's NATed IP network. When you go to DEF CON or you go to ShmooCon, you're like, well, I'm not getting on that terrible, dirty network, I'm just going to use my air card. Well, it's not, or it used to not be 100% safe. Yeah, people had web servers running out there. Who knows what they were? Maybe they were ATMs. I don't know. When I would go back later after I was reviewing the data, a lot of times these devices were no longer there, so it isn't like an ongoing pinned IP. I also found 4 people that happened to be running PDANet. How many of you guys know what PDANet is? It's a little tethering app. It uses some proxy technology. It's an open proxy. So when you run it on your iPhone, I could actually proxy through your iPhone on the NATed network and then out of there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Then I found 3,644 phones listening on port 62078, which that's the default port that non-jailbroken iPhones listen on, which is kind of odd that they bind it to the PDP interfaces. That should really only be bound to the loopback interface, and that port goes wild when you sync with iTunes. And if you Google around a little bit about that port, you'll find some USB muck stuff that some of the iPhone dev folks have been working on. And what I tinkered with for a while was trying to see if I could just sync people's music libraries over the cellular network using that port by piping TCP via USB mux, but yeah, that didn't work out so well. But it's interesting that they're tying it to all of the network interfaces, so maybe we'll see iTunes sync over the network soon. Another thing to note about port 22, when you jailbreak your iPhone, and you initially connect to port 22, there's about a 30-second delay while the iPhone initially makes its SSH key. So you'll establish the three-way handshake, and you won't get a banner for about 30 seconds later. And what that tells me is that's an iPhone that has never been SSH'd into before. And what I found was, well, I never found an iPhone that gave me the SSH banner right away. And what that indicates to me is that all the iPhones that I saw and that I examined, had never been logged into. So when you jailbreak your iPhone, there's a city of stuff. It gives you 3 choices, like a developer, hacker, whatever. Most people probably chose hacker because it sounds so awesome. And they install SSH and they never logged into it. Chances are they probably also didn't change their password. The other kind of interesting thing there is because it wouldn't respond right away, I may have lost some of the data, and map timed out. I don't know. So. Other stuff that I saw out there in the weird private NAT network is I saw a Linux box running SSHD. So it's probably somebody tethered their laptop with one of these little air cards, and they were running SSH. I saw a ton of Windows mobile devices, BlackBerries, Windows PCs. Now, while I was only looking for those 4 ports, when I was doing some of my initial probes and saying, wow, holy crap, there's a lot of stuff out there, I would find some devices that had no ports open. And I'm like, yeah, right. It's responding with resets on every single port. It must be something. So I would just do OS fingerprinting, and it came back as a Windows PC that somebody had tethered. Now, so it looks like AT&T probably figured it out from the cable modem companies. We should probably filter port 445 and 139, and that's something that people do on a lot of networks anyways, hotspots and stuff. So it was somewhat filtered, but I guess that they didn't factor a ton of jailbroken phones being out there. And PDANet for the iPhone is an open proxy. So this is my web browser tethered to my iPhone. And I was in Europe using my friend's foreign plan when I did that, not here in AT&T. This is somebody else's PDANet running on their iPhone, and if you set your proxy to use their iPhone IP, you technically surf out through their iPhone and then out of AT&T's network. So it's just like this bizarre little weird shadow network. So that's all well and good, and you guys have probably seen some media reports about this, you can hack iPhones. And so my colleague Nate and I only ever looked at Nate's iPhone, I didn't look at anyone else's. Nate's iPhone, I found, well, I could SSH it. So I called Nate up and I said, hey, give me your AT&T IP, shut off your Wi-Fi. I want to see if I can log into your iPhone. He was at his house. I was at my house, not on Wi-Fi, and SSH root over to his AT&T IP on 62.100, logged in with the password Alpine. Okay, truth be told, Nate probably changed his password before that and set it back to Alpine for me. And you can see I'm logged into Nate's iPhone as root. Okay, big whoopee-doo. So once you get onto a box as root, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this because it's kind of game over. But if you're interested, these are some interesting things that you can pull out. Everything's pretty much, all the good stuff is stored in private var mobile library. Mail, SMS, voicemail messages, address books, call history, notes, an exhaustive list. I actually pulled this from an iPhone's forensics webpage. Some interesting things in there was the call history, address book, cookies. Cookies, that one may be kind of interesting. If you go to a lot of mobile optimized websites, they store a persistent cookie in your web browser. And if you were to steal the cookie file, maybe you could replay that and be logged into that user session. After the Kismet chat yesterday, I started thinking, you know, if you were to submit some malicious JavaScript into the person's Safari cache with a cache lifetime of 9,000, that may be kind of cool. So that person kind of brings something evil with them no matter where they go. I mean, how many people clear their cache on their iPhone? It's like 27 clicks just to get into that screen. So I don't know, maybe there's something there. I'm just saying. So all right, so you made it onto the iPhone and you have root. And if I was at any other conference, I could probably spend another 30 minutes talking about all the great things you can do and the neat, you know, I can read email and I can use more and I can grep. But let's do something a little bit more with a little bit more style. Those of you that have jailbroken your iPhones are probably familiar with a suite of utilities called Erica utilities. And they're command line utilities for the iPhone. And they're kind of useful. And the two interesting ones for this talk is a tool called Rec Audio, which essentially just turns on the onboard speaker and dumps whatever it hears to an AIF file. And then Find Me, which queries the local iPhone GPS API and spits out your latitude and longitude in XML format. So those two binaries are really interesting when you're logged into somebody's phone as they're walking down the street or if they're in a boardroom or whatever. For those of you that like pictures, or for those of you that were playing the, hey, it's snowing outside drinking game and have a hard time reading, this is a little graphical representation. What we're doing here is there's the attacker and there's the victim, or the willing participant, on AT&T's network, 62.220, 62.100, and what we're going to do is use SCP and SSH to copy things back and forth. As I stated at the beginning of my presentation, the flaw that enabled this over AT&T's network has been fixed as of about October 16th, or the day that I thought my service was canceled. I'm like, honey, we're going to have to get a new number, and I'm going to Cuba for a while. So what you get is a Courier font representation of exactly what we did. As you can see, I'm on Trevor's iPhone at the very top, and I'm using SCP to copy Rec Audio over to Nate's iPhone all over the AT&T NATA network. It's a little 19K file, so it was very quick. Once I'm on Nate's iPhone, I ran Rec Audio in order to turn on his microphone. Truth be told, the very first time you copy that over, you have to run LDID to sign the binary. For those of you that are going to bust me out for, well, you have to sign the binary. That's not exactly correct, Mr. Hawthorne. So as you can see on the previous slide, I ran Rec Audio and recorded whatever Nate was doing in his basement. Let it go for 20, 30 seconds, Control-C out of it, and you can see ls-l, there's the AIF file right there, October 22nd, blah, blah, blah. I just renamed it to something just quick and easy, test.af. Then I SCP'd it back over the network to my phone and then cleaned up the evidence. And by evidence, I mean just delete a couple of files and it's done. So deleted my audio recording, deleted the binary, and deleted bash history. And as you can see, if I run last, well, there is no last logs. You know, I wouldn't say that the iPhone is a highly auditable, trusted computing platform. It kind of wasn't meant to be. So all right. So I logged into Nate's phone, and I recorded him doing things in his basement, doing research, and brought it back and listened in, and that was wildly boring. So other cool things. Well, there's another binary called OpenURL, which basically allows you to call registered URIs on the phone. So, OpenURL tel:/1900 profit.